right, good morning. Going to talk a little bit about some genetic disorders. So, um, and these are just going to be all disorders that are going to be passed from parent to offspring. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so definition of a genetic disorder is, and I guess I should use that term a little more looser. It's not necessarily a genetic disorder. It's just a genetic condition would probably be a more correct way of saying it. But so in some cases they are diseases, but sometimes they're just disorders or conditions. And so these can occur when you inherit the genes from one or both of your parents. Sometimes you need both genes. Sometimes you just need one. Just kind of depends. So the way scientists will study this is they use this thing called a karyotype, which is where they will take all of the DNA from a cell and they'll basically put it all, spread it all out, all 46 chromosomes. They'll pair them up, so they'll find the matching pairs. So you'll basically have 23 pairs all lined up from largest to smallest, and then your sex chromosomes are at the very, very end. They're the last pair of chromosomes in the karyotype. And so it's from this karyotype that geneticists and scientists are able to study and identify some of these particular conditions. And so all a karyotype is just a picture of an individual's chromosomes, all 46 of them. And in some cases, 47, depending on what condition you might have. So the first condition we're going to look at is Down syndrome. Oftentimes this is called trisomy 21 because in order for you to have the condition Down syndrome, you have an extra chromosome on your 21st pair of chromosomes. So trisomy meaning 3, soma usually means body or cell, but in this case it's chromosome. So 3 chromosomes, and then trisomy 21 meaning on the 21st pair. So these individuals often have very particular characteristics. They end up having 47 chromosomes. Usually, if an individual were to have anything more than 47, the embryo would self-abort before it was allowed to develop very far. Because I get that a lot. Well, what happens if you end up having like 50 chromosomes? Well, the body isn't meant to be able to function with that kind of, because of the complications. And so generally the embryo will self-abort in the mom early on. So sometimes this is why miscarriages will happen, and the mother won't necessarily know why, and it'll be too early to really figure out, but oftentimes miscarriages are due to these types of situations. Sometimes they are just happenstance, but sometimes it's just the body's way of knowing that the individual would not be able to survive with these types of complications. So, but 47 chromosomes, the body can still manage. The incidence does tend to increase as the mother gets older, so it's not, perfect science, but it's not uncommon for older mothers to have a higher chance of having a child born with Down syndrome. So, like I said, it doesn't mean anything. I actually had two friends in high school who they had a set of twins when we were 19 years old, and those twins had Down syndrome. So obviously, my friend was 19 years old, so that was just a happenstance. But it doesn't always happen in just the older women. It can happen in very young women as well. So often the individual with Down syndrome is what we would call mentally retarded in their growth and development, meaning just mentally slow. Not saying that they can't learn things, but they are just a little bit slower. And sometimes they can have other complications in their body organs. Sometimes their heart isn't fully developed. Sometimes they have problems with their vision. It just kind of depends on the individual, but it's not uncommon for there to be other problems associated with this particular condition. So, okay, your next one is maybe, there we go, fetal ketonuria. And we generally shorten this down into Tay-Sachs, or sorry, not Tay-Sachs, PKU. I'm getting ahead of myself. Tay-Sachs is the next slide. Fetal ketonuria, or PKU, is caused by two recessive genes. So the child must get this gene from both mom and from dad. That's the only way they're going to have this particular condition. Now, this one is unfortunately sorry, I'm getting that confused with Tay-Sachs. This one occurs when you've got enzymes that can't break down wastes that are found in your blood. So you can get a buildup of these amino acids in various places. So oftentimes people with PKU have to avoid high amounts of protein. So it's a livable condition. It's something that you can cope with and live with. The earlier we can detect it, the better off you are. So it can, because you've got a buildup of these wastes in your bloodstream and in potentially other organs, you can have improper brain development occur, and you can have severe retardation with individuals with PKU. So severe mental slowness and the ability to process things. So it's not uncommon for these individuals to need some very significant assistance with living. Okay. Your next one is Tay-Sachs. Tay-Sachs is also caused by two recessive genes. So with these individuals, they get the gene from mom and from dad. Now again, this is the one that I was talking about that I was getting confused with PKU. With this one, they lack enzymes also, but they, instead of the PKU folks who can't break down amino acids, these people cannot break down fats or lipids. And so these fatty deposits end up collecting in and around the brain. And then it seems to be more prevalent in the Jewish community. So it's just something that seems to pop up more frequently in that particular community, but it can occur outside of that particular group. But unfortunately, because these deposits collect in the brain, oftentimes these children do not live past a very young childhood. They if they make it into elementary school, they don't last too terribly long before they pass. So because those fatty deposits just build up and the brain can't function anymore. And so when the brain can't function, the child ends up passing. So this one's kind of sad. Okay, it's a pretty short set of lectures today. So your last one is cystic fibrosis. With this one, it's caused by two recessive genes. So again, you need to get this particular gene from mom and from dad. This one affects your mucus glands. So the glands that produce your mucus. So with these individuals, when they have both copies of the cystic fibrosis gene, they end up producing large amounts of mucus. So much so that it starts collecting in your lungs. So oftentimes their lungs are very spongy, and even more so because they've got all that mucus, that thick, moist gunk in their lungs. They are often prone to infections, which is very serious since all of this is in their lungs. And so they're very, very susceptible to pneumonia, which is an infection of your lungs. So these individuals have to be very, very careful. Because a small infection can turn into a big problem for them. Oftentimes, these individuals do not live to adulthood. Now, in recent past, we have been able to develop things where medications that kind of slows down that mucus production, and now these individuals are able to live into their 20s or so, sometimes their 30s. It used to be back in the early 2000s, the late 90s, these individuals wouldn't last into their mid 20s. They would pass in their late teens, early teens, late teens. But we are making progress, and so now these individuals are actually living a little bit longer. So these are just 4 different types of genetic disorders that are passed down. There are tons more, but we're just going to cover these basic 4, the big 4 that you probably have heard of, or these are the ones that you're most likely to encounter. So you've got your test coming up here at the end of the week. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And have a good day.